Hey. I was talking to my grandma this morning. Today is Saturday. It's still early in the afternoon here. It's a beautiful day. The weather is changing where I live. Fall is quickly rolling in. I've had my window open since early this morning. Um, and like just listening to the sound of the cars going by, also hearing the sound of the breeze coming off of the water. I live literally steps away from the water, and it's been a beautiful day. It's been a beautiful day. I was talking to my grandmother. I called my grandma and I was talking to her for like almost 2 hours, and I wanted to bring to you a conversation that she and I was having, which we talk about a lot of stuff. If you don't know, I'm named after my grandmother. And I'm realizing more and more and more every day, especially as I am more mature and I look back at pictures of her um in her earlier years, like young adult years. And as I'm in a place to really receive the conversations I have with her, I realize that I'm like my grandmother in a lot of ways, a lot of ways. Um, but so I talked to her. I call my grandma when I need to talk to somebody. That's my home girl, right? My grandma is gonna work me through it. My grandmother is a very youthful grandmother. She's not like other grandmothers. She's very in the know. She's very intentional about staying in the know. And I am so appreciative of that. So one of the things we had like started talking about today, well, was talking about was we were talking about a dynamic that we're seeing that we saw with some, about something. And then I asked my grandma, I was like, why is that? Right. And I'm gonna tell you what we were talking about. We were talking about the over tendency of people, specifically um, women, women to always want to be in a place to like fix and help fix. That was the word I used, fix other people, when in reality, we need to be fixing ourselves, right? And so I was telling grandma, I asked my grandma, I said, why is that? I said, I see that a lot. I see that a lot in people's career choices. And I, of course, went into more depth with my grandma, but I was like, I see it in people's career choices where a person, a woman, and we'll just talk people at this point, right? People choose careers where they are responsible. And I know we don't fix people, right? But believe it or not, there are many helping professionals, social workers who come into this field with the belief, honest, true belief that they will fix people. Right. I've heard people say it that way. I've read it in forums, all of the things. Right. So I asked my grandma, I was like, why is that? Why do people put all of their focus on fixing people when they have enough business of their own that they need to be fixing? That was how I said it, right? And so my grandmother was just like, it's much easier, which, we've heard before. And she said it a different way, and hopefully I remember exactly. But essentially, like, it's just easier to focus on other people's stuff and avoid your own. And so I wanted to bring this conversation to you because um, I want to know, and I wrote it down, when will you take time for yourself? Because then from that conversation, I told my grandma, I was like, for me, I'm not fixing nobody. I say I'm trying to fix myself. I'm trying to heal myself. I can't heal nobody else. I can't help them through their stuff. I got enough stuff of my own that I need to work through. Right. And I said, honestly, a lot of the people we were originally referencing, I was like, also need to spend the same intentional time working on themselves, working on healing themselves. I said, because in all honesty, the reason, they're showing up the way that they are, the way they're treating others, the way that they are as like projects and things like that. I said, it's ultimately because they haven't had time to themselves. I said, for me, I realized that several years ago. I went from being a child to being a young adult who's out in the world taking care of myself to also a parent to being all of these other things. And for the first time, when my daughter went away for college, that was the first time that I really truly had time to myself, time to figure out who I am, what do I want to do, how do I want my life to look like, as a whole individual person, right? Other than as a mother, other than as a daughter, other than as a granddaughter, right? And my grandmother was saying that she too has experienced that, right? And so I wanted to bring the question to you, like, when will you take time for yourself? Um, and what I was telling my grandma is like, I have the honor, the opportunity, right? I didn't necessarily knew I was signing up for it when I started the MSW coach and working with social workers, but I have and I don't like take it lightly. Like I do a lot of work behind the scenes on for me on about regarding me to ensure that I'm always showing up in a place of wholeness, right? I do a lot of intentional work. Um because I don't take lightly when people invest in working with me, right? I understand it's a life choice, it's a life decision, it's a critical life decision when you decide to invest in coaching, when you decide to step out and do something new, when you decide to take a chance in your career, especially if you've been in the job for longer than 15 years. It's all you are making a bold move. So I do a lot of intentional work to ensure that I'm always coming from a place of wholeness. And I say that because I was telling someone close to me that a few months ago, um, they wanted me to like go do some go do an outing. I was like, no, I really need to do some things tonight to prepare for what I have to do tomorrow because I had a workshop that I was presenting. I said, and when I'm preparing for my workshops and when I'm like coaching people through their career journey, I like to ensure that I am coming from a full place, right? And I have to do a lot of intentional things. Like I have to ensure that I am really in tune with what I have going on. I have to make certain that not just the systems, not the admin stuff, but just me coming from a place of wholeness. Um, because people share with me very intimate conversations, like very intimate details, very people talk with me about their deeper fears, right? Which is a vulnerable place to be when it's tied to your career, which is tied to your money, which is tied to your place of survival, right? So I wanted to come and ask you the question because and I think I kind of went off what I was originally going to say, but because I don't have any notes, we just talking, let's just chat, okay? When will you take time for yourself? Because in those intimate conversations that I have with people, there are social workers, helping professionals, people, period, who are really bursting at the seams, who are carrying a lot, who are holding a lot, who are responsible for a lot, who are enduring a lot, not just in their 9 to 5, which oftentimes bleeds out over into weekend hours, being on call, but they're also enduring a lot in their personal lives. And so I don't take that lightly. However, it's giving me an inside view as to what people really are dealing with. And the fact that when I was dealing with these things and people weren't talking about it out loud, this is why I come on here and talk to y'all about the thing, right? I thought it was just me. I thought I was just going through the thing. And so with that, I want to say if you are experiencing a lot of stuff, whatever your stuff is, I don't know what your stuff is, you have to be very intentional about making time for you. That's my point. right? Because my grandma started a conversation off with, well, one of the things she was saying, she was like, so what you doing for work, right? My grandma is investigator one-on-one, baby. She gonna ask you the question. She gonna get to the bottom of it. And who else does that? Me. She gonna ask you, and baby, she gonna ask you in many ways. She gonna get the information she needs. You don't have to tell her. She gonna get it out of you. So she was like, so you're working full time in your business? I was like, yeah. And she was like, well, what does that look like with your clients? And I was telling her, I was like, I help people get jobs. I help people shift to a place where they can finally thrive in life through their money-making source, which is their job. And I said, "Well, why do I do that?" I said, because I had to do that in my own life. And now I teach others. I said, as of today, I've helped well over 170 people get good jobs. They are buying homes, they're having babies, they're traveling domestically and internationally, they're working remotely, they are prioritizing their health, they're creating retirement accounts for the first time ever in life. They are paying down debt. They're saving money. They're thinking about the impact that they want to make in the world. And my grandma was like, wow, that's wonderful. Right. And I said, um, yeah, but ultimately at the root of it, a lot of the people come to me because they are trying to escape and create a new life for themselves where they make time for themselves. You get what I'm saying? And so, um, my point of all of this is when you are trying to shift from a place where you have spent all of your years, all of your waking moments, giving, over giving, maybe even being taken advantage of, where people take from you because they know that you are a giver in whatever way, shape, form, or fashion. Remember, giving isn't always monetary. It can be your emotional support. It can be your listening ear. Overheard a therapist say in a public forum, she was like, they were talking about being burnt down in their work. And one of the therapists was like, I'm a natural listener. I've always been a natural listener. And so people just naturally come up to me and start talking about their things. And then she went on to talk about her career. And my immediate first thought was, just because you're a natural listener, because she was essentially drawing the conclusion that she became a therapist because she's a natural listener, right? But me, Marthea being Marthea, the daughter of my grandma, because my grandma, she don't go with the flow of the of the room. She's her own person. I am too. Marthea being the other person. Oh, and I want to say this, like my grandmother prioritize self-care at the highest level for me. And I'm gonna talk about that. But me being me, when I read that or when I heard the person say that, I immediately was like, just because you're a good listener doesn't mean you have to take that on, that role as your money making source. You could just be a good listener and be a good friend to your family, however, do something else career wise. But when I see stuff like that, when I see or hear or learn about people's justification for choosing a career field that doesn't allow them to prioritize themselves, that doesn't allow them to take time off, that doesn't allow them to have a bad day, that doesn't allow them to take time off to grieve, that doesn't hold space for them to just be a human and feel their emotions, I immediately get an instant sense of sadness because that person didn't know they had options. And so my point of this whole conversation is to say, one, you need to prioritize yourself. That should be the goal every day. Every day when I wake up, my goal is to be the light, right? To be a representation of God, but also to make certain that I'm taking care of Marthea at the highest level possible, right? So like my grandma said, that means telling people no. I said, Grandma, I don't have no problem telling people no. You know that, right? I keep them mad with my nose, right? But when I hear people talk about how their career was chosen based off of a role that was put onto them. Because let's be honest, I'm no longer talking about that situation that I overheard, that I was a part of, that conversation. But let's be honest, a lot of the traits, and this is what I've learned from being I'm very self-reflective. I told you all that a lot. I spend a lot of my time being very self-reflective, right? Because I have a vision for my life and it requires me to do that. So one of the things that I've learned from being self-reflective about my own journey and then listening to the stories of others and gleaning lessons from people here, there, and everywhere, the sum of how we show up in our adult life, and y'all know I'm not clinical, roll with me, this real life scenarios. The sum of how we show up in our life as adults is a direct result of instances, experiences we had in childhood, right? Childhood, be it good, bad, traumatic, indifferent, in between. It's a result of that. So when I hear someone say, because I've had another social worker tell me that before, like they were in the throes of contemplating becoming a life coach. All right. And anytime a social worker tell me that, I'm a side eye you every time, right? And my question back, which was my question to them, I said, but do you like listening to people problems? And she was like, no, not really. But people come up to me for it a lot. I said, just because they come up to you for it doesn't mean you have to now take that on as your career, especially if you don't enjoy it, you don't like it. So my point is, a lot of the things that happened to us in childhood, be it we were put in the roles and responsibilities as adults, even though we were children. Maybe you grew up without a family support system, a solid, healthy support system, whatever the thing is. Just because you had to take on that role in childhood doesn't mean you need to do it now in adulthood. However, a lot of people, when I say a lot, not just helping professionals, people as a whole, it's a lot of things that I observe. And one day I'll talk more about it. But people as a whole, when it comes to careers, choose their careers based on something positive or negative that happened in their formidable years, right? So I see a very big trend around, like, I'm in the entrepreneurial space on social media. So like the things that I follow is people who own businesses, things like that. A trend that I've noticed for years now is that a lot of the entrepreneurs that we see, the people who are like hardcore entrepreneurs, they've never had a job in life, like a 9 to 5. If they did, they only worked it for a few months and they were fired, right? Or they only worked in for like entry level jobs, or it's never in between. Let me say that. It's never in between what I'm noticing this trend. And I haven't really dissected it. I haven't analyzed it, but I picked up on it, right? So I pick up on things and patterns. It's either they worked a job that was very, very, very entry level and either got fired, most likely fired, and then they left that job. Or they were super, 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 super overachievers, and they had these huge careers, right? Huge, huge careers, not anything in the helping profession. Huge careers, very technical careers. Maybe they were in a leadership role and they were the biggest that it could be, right? And so what I see is that, which is a common thing, and I've done a podcast episode on it before, where when you are in your 20s and even in your early 30s, right, it starts to slow down around like 31, 32, but people don't talk about it usually until like 35. What happens is in your 20s, when you come out of college or you come out of school, you go hardcore, 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 right? That's why we have all of the corporate baddies. And if you notice, a lot of the people who were championing the corporate baddie like phenomenon are no longer corporate baddies. They have left. They have slowed down. Why? It's because they are now entering that range. If I took a wild guess and looked up some of their birthdays. They are around that 31, 32-year-old range where you have like gone full, you have gone 200 miles an hour in your career. You've done all of the things, you've taken on all of the extra projects, you come in, you stayed late, you worked overtime, you have taken on supervisory leadership roles. But what I always tell you around when you get ready to approach your 35th birthday, your world will shift, your priorities will shift, your physical body will change, and your approach to work changes. That's why you still see a lot of the talk around corporate baddies, but you don't hear it how we was hearing it 2 years ago, right? It's because the girls are getting older. The girls are quickly approaching to their mid-30s now. They are shifting to being full-time entrepreneurs or just not working at all, whatever the thing. There's a huge community on YouTube with people who are leaving the corporate world, right? So the corporate baddie phenomenon is dying out because those girls are getting older. However, there's always going to be an influx of them, right? So my point is, what I notice is with the entrepreneurs is that either they were really, really big in their career or they were very entry level. And at some point, I believe if I did some research on the thing, it was around the time where they began to hit the 35-year mark, 32, 33, when their priorities shifted, when their needs shifted, when their life shifted, when their physical body shifted. And so because they did not know how to shift gears, right, to either shift into a role that was more, that met their needs as far as like, okay, I need a remote job. Maybe I'm not in leadership. However, if you're at the top, where do you go from there? You don't go down to the bottom because the people know you for this. So what they do is they just make a mass exodus from the workforce and they go become entrepreneurs, right? Which is a good thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I say that to say this. When I see that, I was like, you only left because you didn't know how to take charge of your career and adjust based on your new needs. And so that's what I teach my coaching clients. And we just talking now, clearly I'm off script. That's what I teach my coaching clients. I teach them how when life changes, when your needs change, when your outlook on life changes, when your physical body changes, maybe when you want to change geographical locations, you can change. Why? Because I teach them how to find job opportunities that align with their new interests, with their new areas of focus. When I teach them how to articulate their value to employers, I teach them how to identify if they're qualified for jobs. I teach them how to apply for the jobs. I teach them how to, so this is a skill set they take going with them for the rest of their career. So instead of just, and what this looks like for social workers, because I gave y'all entrepreneur look on it, but what it looks like for social workers when they hit that coming up to the 35-year mark, and you've been doing it for years, a lot of social workers are just leaving the profession because they don't know how to shift from going type roles in their 20s to a role where now I can just transition, or they get stuck, right? A lot of social workers get stuck because they don't know any other option. So what that looks like, and I'm not being funny, what that looks like is your OG social workers still in very entry level case management jobs, still in roles where they're on call every weekend, still in jobs where they have to work in the midnight hours, still in jobs where they have to go out in snowstorms and hurricanes. And my desire, right? This is why I teach my clients how to navigate their job when their needs change, rather than just writing your resume, rather than just giving you a job title list, rather than just editing your resume. I teach you these skills because I know from my own journey that your life will change. You ain't gonna want to do what you're doing, what you've been doing. It's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. And you don't want to get stuck. So like the cornerstone of what I'm teaching people is way bigger than getting jobs. I'm teaching you how to take care of yourself, like how to make time for yourself, starting with your main money making generating source. Right. And so I do a lot of deeper work, even with my people who have gotten macro jobs. I'm working with them on strategic ways to make time for themselves now that they're on this next level, because we need to be planning for the next level. We need to be planting seeds now for the next level and the level after that. So my question is, I keep looking at my question, when will you take time for yourself? I'm gonna end it there. Um, I need to call somebody back. But when will you take time for yourself? You have options. If you're in your early 20s, if you're in your early 30s, you better be planting seeds. You better be planting seeds. You better be planting seeds, because you don't want to be the OG social worker who's worn down and tired, because you've been doing that for 15, 20 years. You don't want to be that. You don't want to be that. And you don't want to exit the workforce by force, right? Meaning you're burnt out, so you just have to leave. There's a whole island of social workers that was exit out by force because they didn't go and research what options they had. So they just left. You don't want to be that, especially if this is your main money-making source. Make certain that you grab my e-courses down in the link in the bottom at Macro and pay to learn more about macro social work careers. I'll talk to you later. Bye. Happy macro career planning.